So I've seen some discussion lately about crosshairs and which ones are the best. Also, there are some that are specific to certain weapons. So I thought it'd be an interesting video to kind of go over all the weapons that I feel like have a specific crosshair that might work a little bit better for them, and then kind of explain why and how to set them up. So first, I just kind of want to go over some of the basic crosshairs and what you guys prefer. And for me, I prefer just having a dot on most of the weapons. This is sort of my standard go-to. It's just a dot. I just find this helps me a little bit more with tracking. There's tons of like verticality, horizontal, so I feel like the standard plus sign might not be ideal for me. So I will quickly show you that. Basically just the center dot on with a 3 radius and then a 2 thickness. Now I feel like depending on your resolution, the crosshairs might look a little bit different for each screen, so take that with a grain of salt when I am explaining these numbers. I don't know fully if it's going to look the same on different resolutions. So another standard crosshair that you might see a lot is basically just to not have the center dot and to have something like a plus sign where it is set up a little bit offset. You have some decent length to it, and it might look something like this. This is a pretty standard one you might find in like a game such as CS or whatever. And this is going to be another standard that you kind of find a lot with people. So consider using this if you're looking for something that is just basic to start off with. Now, some settings I think are really important. So we also have the in-world crosshair. So when this is on, basically as you're sliding around, jumping, shooting, you're going to see that my crosshair is moving all over the place. I personally do not find that this is useful at all. It doesn't represent where your bullets are going to be going. It just sort of constantly flicks up. So this can get really confusing. Don't recommend it. Now this is a dispersion one, so this one also moves. So let me kind of break this down. So I have this one on circle, but there is different options like the plus sign, the T, but I feel like the circle is the best one to represent basically what it does. So I'm just having this set up at a standard one. You can obviously change the thickness, stuff like that, to something that makes sense to you. Now, the idea of it is that it's supposed to represent where your bullets could potentially go. My issue with this is that as you are moving around, sliding, jumping, it's moving around a lot. You can see it's just constantly jiggling on the screen, which can get really, really confusing. Another thing is that it doesn't always accurately represent stuff. So as you can see here with shotguns, it is actually moving in and out. It's making itself a little bit bigger and smaller, and this isn't true. So basically, shotguns always have the exact same dispersion, whether you're jumping, sliding, crouching, whatever, it's always going to be the same. So this reticle moving is not very good. Another thing is that this doesn't actually calculate for the dispersion. As you can see there, it's going outside of the circle. So for the most part, I find that this isn't the best, but it isn't the worst in some stuff like, say, SMGs, where you might be spraying a lot to know that, oh, like maybe I should, you know, not spray from this far away, or maybe I could crouch and spray, and it might be a little bit more accurate. So it's not the worst. The only thing is, like, with how much jittering is happening, it just doesn't really fully accurately represent the way that the bullets are going to go. It also becomes very, very distracting. So an alternative to the dispersion sort of crosshair is going to be a static one. So we're going to basically turn off this dispersion. I'm going to put a center dot on because I do kind of enjoy having the center dot, even with something like this, which is a circle that is going to be offset. The length doesn't matter when it's set to a circle on static here. And then I'm going to put everything else kind of standard like this. And since this is at 28, and we see we have the M26, so as you see, it's not moving around. It's not wiggling, it's doing nothing. It's just sitting still. So when I shoot, all the pellets are going to go within that circle. Whether I'm jumping or sliding, anything, it's always going to be within that circle. Even if we're at close range, you can see still that circle. So that is why this is what I use a lot when I'm using specifically the M26. And what's interesting enough is that it's pretty close to the way that the SA12 would be. So the SA12, we're going to actually just crank this up to 29, and boom, all the pellets are within the circle. They have a very, very similar spread. As you can see, the SA12 is a little bit more of a vertical spread, whereas the M26 is more of a horizontal spread. Now for the model 1887, we could use a circle crosshair like this that encompasses all of the pellets, and this would be at 17, but I actually find it's a lot better to go with something like this that is a plus sign. I'm going to set this to 13. The length is going to be set at just 1, And then the thickness we can crank up all the way. Now we get a box shape. And then what we're going to do is turn off the center dot, as I find since this is a relatively small crosshair, we don't really need that center dot. And as you can see, all the pellets go within this box. This more accurately represents the shape of the spread, whereas the other ones are a little bit more circular. This one is a bit more of a box. So having this box here is going to be a lot better for trying to line up the time at which we should shoot. So instead of, oh, we might be a little bit too far out, we know that those pellets are going to miss on the edges. We can just wait a bit until we get closer, and then we know at what range we can start shooting the Model 18887. Now, this crosshair is a little bit different. So basically the logic here is we're going to be using a T-shape reticle. It's going to be on, it's going to be static, along with the dot. And then we're going to set the thickness a little bit more, so it's more of like a line. So the reason is for when we're using something with a drop, we can figure out and calculate a little bit better as to where the shot might go at the longer ranges so that we can kind of calculate a little bit better for headshots and shots in general. Now, obviously this is going to be very different because when I'm here, hip firing, obviously that's not going to hit. We just know that it's going to be somewhere within the bottom line to the center dot. It's mainly just going to be something that can help us learn the weapon as we go on. The side ones can also help for calculating when to release it. So when it's within those lines, maybe we know, oh, we need to make sure that their head is within this line at this range when they're moving at this speed. It just gives you something else to start calculating. The more that you use a crosshair like this, the more intuitive it's going to be. So I know, oh, well, I'm within this range here. I'm also ADS'd. So maybe it's going to be, halfway between this or maybe a little bit more. So we can kind of calculate for the headshots. And that is sort of the logic behind this. You can use this with really anything. If you want to start using it with, say, something like the throwing knives, you could totally do that. The only thing is that the drop for the throwing knives is a little bit different. Basically, it is pretty straight right away. And then after a certain point, it really starts to drastically drop off. So using something like this to calculate for a drop might not work. And even if we were to put it at like the max settings here, where it's offset so much, we're getting to the point where it starts to become redundant and we don't really know at what range we are where it should be. This is just something to consider if you are learning these weapons. You could put it on, see if it helps you out or not, or if it just confuses you, then obviously take it off. But I think this makes a lot more sense for something like the bow, even though it could definitely apply to something like the CO40 and potentially even the MGL. It really is up to you what you prefer. I'm just trying to give you guys some ideas for potential crosshairs in order to learn some of the weapons a little bit easier. Now, I suggest you guys get out there and start experimenting with some different crosshairs and see what works best for you. I find certain weapons you definitely get a little bit more or less benefit from using different crosshairs. I know with the shotguns, for me, it almost felt like my shotgun started to feel like it was doing more damage once I put the correct sort of reticle with it. In order to encompass all of those pellets within your circle static crosshair, it made a lot more sense to me. Especially when you're learning weapons, I feel like these can be a really good learning tool, even though it might feel weird at first. Once you start to get the hang of it, everything just starts to piece together and it feels really good. Anyway, if you guys have any other kind of suggestions on little quick tips like this, I would like to do a little bit more in terms of stuff that isn't just directly, light, medium, heavy, cash out, rank, stuff like that. It'd be nice to just see some different guides on my channel, so let me know. And I will see you in the finals.